You guys just mentioned hope. I want to talk about that a little bit because if reading headline after headline about climate change or the COVID-19 pandemic has you muttering a few four-letter words when it comes to the future, here is one to add to the mix: hope. Our next guest is harnessing the power of hope in his new book, making a case for how we can use it to renew in a world of peril. Thomas Homer-Dixon is the author of Commanding Hope, and he's in Victoria and joins us this morning. Thanks for waking up early for us this morning.
Good morning.
So this exploration of hope opens with a woman named Stephanie May. Can you tell us who she was and what you learned from her?
Stephanie May was a housewife in Connecticut in the 1950s when she initiated a national movement to stop the testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. At that time, the Soviet Union and the United States were testing literally dozens of weapons, sometimes dozens every year in the atmosphere, and that was spreading radiation around the entire planet. And Stephanie thought that was going to be enormously dangerous for her children because that radiation could work its way up the food chain and perhaps produce leukemia in her children. So she organized others from across the country and eventually around the world to stop testing in the atmosphere. And that produced a treaty, a partial test ban treaty in the early 1960s that put all testing underground. It was a remarkable accomplishment. So I use this story as an example of how one person can literally change the world. And I study her hope, and in particular her attitude towards the future and how she used hope to keep herself going even when things were very dark and she felt that she couldn't make any progress. But she still kept herself going and eventually achieved something remarkable.
It is remarkable, absolutely. Now, you break hope down into three different types. You've got honest hope, astute hope, and powerful hope. Can you walk us through each, starting with honest hope?
So honest hope is literally about making sure that your hope reflects the state of affairs in the world. So, for instance, if we're trying to respond to climate change, we want to make sure that we understand how serious the problem is, and we're not fooling ourselves. We're not engaged in wishful thinking about how serious the challenge is and what we need to do to address it. So it's about anchoring ourselves in a realistic state of affairs and sense of what's happening in the world. Astute hope is about understanding how other people see the world around us so that we can work better with them, or perhaps work better around them in order to get to where we want to go to make the world better. And then powerful hope is fundamentally about having a very clear sense in the future of where we want to go, a possible world in our mind that's well defined, that gives us a sense for the bright future that we're hoping for. Frequently, hope doesn't have that clearly articulated. It's just a vague idea. But in my case, I'm saying that hope should really, in commanding hope, hope should really have a very clear object. It should have a very clear sense of the future that it wants to achieve. So
when we're speaking practically in a year like this, with 2020 and a pandemic going on, how does this apply?
So, I think when it comes to the pandemic, we need to be very clear in our minds about the dangers that we face and the opportunities we face. In other words, we need to make sure that we understand as best we can, each of us, the nature of the science and how to protect ourselves. That's all part of honest hope. I think there's, unfortunately, a fair amount of wishful thinking right now about, for instance, whether it's going to be all okay when we send our kids back to school. I have young children who are about to go back to school. And I think that honest hope really reflects that sense of understanding for the pluses and minuses. And then the other part that really relates to the pandemic is powerful hope, having a very clear sense of where we want to be after this whole pandemic is finished, and the opportunities we have. Maybe in some ways life will return to normal, but in some ways it'll be different. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might actually even be a better thing. We may have learned some things through this pandemic about how we want the world to be and it could be better in the future for us. And that's part of what motivates us to keep going and push past this difficulty.
I love this perspective and this outlook. It's certainly the voice that I needed to hear today. The book is called Commanding Hope. Thomas, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.